All right, so the way the Squirrel works is your Q, your secondary, your grenade. It throws out a painting, and under the painting, it creates a thing called blank domain. When you're standing on that blank domain, you will gain 2 ink points per second. Ink points are a resource that you have 0 out of 30. When you're on the puddle that you create with your Q, you gain 2 per second, and when you're off of it, you lose 2 per second. When you have 15, you will gain a 25% rate of fire buff and a minus 25% reload time buff, and it's really powerful. And you lose it when you go below 15 stacks. The way that the Squirrel works is that when you use your primary and turn into a Squirrel, you will be a Squirrel for 16 seconds, and 2 orbs will spawn. You pick up the orbs and they will give you 10 ink points. But that is in addition to the 30 that you get for turning into a Squirrel. So when you turn into a Squirrel, your ink points are set to 30, and then the cap is removed, so you can get up to 50. And then anytime you left click when you are in Squirrel form, you will do a tail whip that hits around you for a decent amount of damage, and it will cost 15 ink points. If you do not have the 15 ink points, it'll take all the remaining ink points, and then any missing ink points will get deducted from your time. And while you're a Squirrel, your damage is reduced by 60%. It is a 60% less damage taken, which is really busted. Upon lethal damage, you save your HP is set to 1, and you reduce 2 seconds of the transformation duration. So this isn't complete invulnerability. If you just keep getting attacked lethally, then you will just burn all your time and die, but this is still extremely busted. Cool. And then the final thing that this character does is that if you anytime that there are monsters or like in your vicinity, you will generate a sort of righteous fire around you. It is like a radial around you if you're a Squirrel, and if you're Anthro, you will. If you're not a Squirrel, you it becomes like a donut AoE around you. This little puddle, or this little like righteous fire that you have around you, deals 75 ink damage every 0.5 seconds to enemies within. It's much stronger than it sounds. Some other things to note is that anytime you gain or lose 5 ink points, you gain a movement speed buff. Anytime that you pick up an orb, you restore some of the duration that you lost on your transformation if you want to be transformed into a Squirrel longer. So you just kind of delay picking up the orbs until you lose some time, and then you pick them up again. You can do that if you wish. Ink Armor makes it so that you have 30% damage resistance when your shield is full, which is really strong. And then these two are just typical whatevers. They're important, and they basically kind of guide you towards getting stabs and stuff. Anyway, cool. A couple of the things that are important for like the ability side of the character is that you have like passives that basically make it so that you can increase the base damage of all of your ink stuff. What is your ink stuff? Well, that's the dot and the swipe that you do. So that the righteous fire dot and the swipe you do. But then there's also, if you hit something, if you have residual traces and you hit a monster, the monster will gain a stacking debuff that damages them over time, and that also counts as ink damage. So if you get Surge Ink, you just kind of deal a ton of damage with your Squirrel form, both with your righteous fire, your swipe, and the dot that happens from the swipe. Some other things that you can do are like Colorful Black, where you pick up orbs to increase your damage and reduce your final damage you take even more, so it can go up to 90% less, which is, what the hell are they thinking? There's Domain Expansion, which increases the radius of your righteous fire. Continuous Design, which increases your duration. It makes it so that more orbs spawn. And Yin and Yang, which makes it so that your puddle counts as, your righteous fire counts as your puddle, which means that you will always count as being in your puddle. Something else you can take for that is Breathing Rhythm, which basically makes it so that you gain a trail of ice. Well, it's basically a trail of ink that that is basically the blank domain. And then this is a 50% more damage because more damage taken from enemies, which, yeah. So one more thing that I want to point out is there's this spiritual blessing that I think everyone should mulligan as Squirrel because it's extremely overpowered. Soul Sublimation, when dealing damage in Ink Domain, 90% plus 90% final damage and gain 2 ink points, triggers once per enemy every 3 seconds. And you can scale it with movement speed, which is, you may do this, you may not do it. It doesn't matter. 10 times damage for the 75 damage you do with your dot, which scales even further. Not that dot, the puddle dot ink domain, which So just to be clear, this 900% damage is just for your Righteous Fire, but it's still like it's 750 damage for the first hit, and then 75 for like 5 more hits, and then 750 again. That 750 that you do at the beginning might just kill like most mobs at the beginning, and if you continually scale your ink damage, it will kill most mobs all the way through Act 3. It's really, really powerful. It's really, really strong. You want soul sublimation while you just handle the rest of your build. So how do I feel about this character? Overpowered as fuck. I would nerf it by making it so that the ink spirit damage reduction is like maybe 10%, and that you scale the mitigation only with continuous design up to 30. Or up to 40, I guess, if you have the base 10% tier. This is a bit much. And then I would make it so that the save is 1 HP would reduce 2 seconds. I would make it so that it reduces 3 seconds instead. Or I would just remove that lifeline altogether because it's extremely overpowered and stupid. But it's never getting nerfed, so go and play this character. Get your solo clear 4-scale Rian 9 run out of the way. If they do nerf it, I mean, cool, I guess, but I mean, damage is done. They don't nerf anything in this game. At least the character's really fun. So there's that. I didn't go over any of these things because ink painting, the drawing come true is kind of bad. There is like a build you can do where you scale its damage, you get overflowing ink, and basically anytime that you like are in Squirrel form, you just kind of repeatedly shoot drawing come true at people because you just are constantly, anytime you get over 15 ink, or over 20 ink, you just constantly throw paintings out. I don't think that the required work necessary to get that to work is worth over just the Squirrel build. It's just way too strong. One more thing to note is that shade drawing here allows you to increase the damage of the buff that you get if you have over 15 ink by a significant amount. I think it's extremely strong. You should definitely have it when you have your weapon online. Okay, cool. That's it. That's Squirrel.